What is going on, guys? Welcome to Fightful Movie Club. I'm Rob Wilkins, along with Gisberto, Guzzo, and our special guest today is none other than Akira, and we are reviewing Blade Runner from 1982. We are glad you are here, but more importantly, we are glad Akira is here. Thank you for joining us, Akira. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing okay. We're saying this right now. We're not doing any other version. We're doing the final cut version because Ridley Scott is a silly old man who can't get it together, and final cut's the only way it makes sense. Okay, we're saying
Sounds
that right
good.
now.
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
I was doing the notes and I was like, oh shit, I should double check that we're doing the final cut, because sometimes you talk to people and they've only ever seen the original cut, like the theatrical or the director's
theatrical
cut.
where Harrison Ford's talking to you and you're like,
Yeah, at the end.
To explain this to me. And you can tell Harrison Ford does not want to recite or read any of this. Cold fish. That's what they call me. And you're like, dude, like he tried to do it so bad that they wouldn't put it in the movie, and really got, no, that's perfect. Put it in.
Yeah, you have the horrible voiceover. You have them using aerial shots from The Shining. And they had to like explain the whole movie to people like we're all idiots.
Well, to be fair, a lot of people are idiots. Like, I'm not going to contest that, but you didn't have to spoon feed it. If they put the version, if they put the final cut out when it had come out, it probably would have done better in theaters. But what they put out 100%. Originally was not good.
No, and they screwed up. They marketed it as like an action adventure film in the same summer that had, I wrote it down here, The Thing, Star Trek II, Conan the Barbarian, and E.T. all came out the same
E.T.
summer.
came out. I forgot about that.
And they marketed it as an action adventure film, and then when you watch it, it's like, that is not what this is.
There's action in it, and I think the action that happens in the movie, it is substantial enough. Like it stands out more than most action, but because everything else is so atmospheric and slow, so when the action does happen, it's jarring and it's different. Like when he shoots, not Pris, the second android, that's the second one.
She's running through the glass, right?
Yeah, she's running through the glass. The music's playing. It's effective and it's emotional. But is it like crazy kung fu sequences? Is it Conan the Barbarian with Arnold going, ah? No, it's not. It's not. It's not gonna. And it's not E.T. E.T. flying through the air. You know, family happy movie. Yeah. It's very much a. It's a very dark. It's dreary. However, I still think that it's probably one of the more beautiful movies in terms of thematics in it. Like there's a 100%. There's a beauty to the entirety of the movie that I think is completely understated. Of these people, these replicants finding their humanity despite being told that you're not a human. Like being human is not living a long life. Being a human is finding a purpose and finding, a reason, or finding something to try and live for, like Roy does. He wants to live longer because he realized, oh my God, life is so cool. Like there's so more things I want to do. Or even Harrison Ford's character does the same thing. Like, I hate the idea of Harrison Ford is a replicant, because the whole point is it's a human being, he's going through the exact same kind of emotional turmoil that the replicants are going through. And because a replicant realized it before the actual human did, he finally realizes, oh, life doesn't suck that bad. Life is worth living for. And I don't have to be stuck in this cold, monotonous, repetitive mindset that he was in, which is the whole point.
Yeah, that'll kind of lead us to a pretty good discussion later on the whether or not Deckard is a replicant. So you're in the camp of he's not.
No, it's Ridley Scott got that crap in his head. He put it in like the second or third version of the movie that he put out. The stupid unicorn. It makes no sense. It completely defeats the purpose of the story. And especially now with 2049 out, which I do love, it's a different. It's similar, but it's different, and it's just completely different movies. But the whole point of 2049 does not work if Deckard is a human. I mean, if Deckard is a replicant, because the whole point is a human and a replicant had a kid.
Yes.
That's the baseline of the movie. If Deckard is a replicant, it makes even less sense. Like a replicant had a kid.
Yeah.
How?
He's got it. Yeah.
And this is where like a lot of fans online who are in the Deckard's a replicant camp, they consider 2049 as non-canonical. They're like, oh, it kind of veers away from the intention of the original. And
which one?
Yeah. Which
There's
one?
like 8
Exactly.
different versions.
Yeah, and I'm kind of torn because, like you said, it wasn't the original intention. It doesn't really work as well with the story, but then Ridley Scott drops all these kind of weird hints throughout the movie. Like one of my favorite scenes is when after Rachel kills Leon in the street, they go back to the apartment and she asks Deckard, is anyone going to are you going to come after me? And he says, no, but someone else will. And just in that moment, there's like this little kind of flicker of like amber in his eyes, which they kind of show throughout the movie as being something that happens with replicants. So it's like a really cool touch. And for me, I was like, oh, that means he's a replicant. And then they do stuff that says, oh, maybe he's not. And then they leave the little origami unicorn at the end. And it's like, what the hell am I supposed to think?
Just because in that moment he looks like a replicant, it does not mean he's a replicant. It could just be a visual audio cue of he's acting like a robot.
I think it's the director just trying to fuck with us.
No, I just think the director's an idiot who doesn't understand his own material. Like, dude, they did an interview. I can't remember, but they're talking about Blade Runner, and he goes off this entire tangent. How he's like, I love Beavis and Butthead, and it's the most insane thing. Like, Ridley Scott's a freaking crazy person. Who
seen that.
He's put out some of the best movies, like Alien. Adore it. However, he also put out Alien Covenant. Hated it. The man doesn't get his own movies. I think like he gets lost in the plot of trying to like overly correct things. Now, mind you, I also liked Prometheus, but I think
love Prometheus.
He lost the plot. He gets these ideas that are good, and then he loses the plot over time. I think a lot of artists do that too, though. Like because a lot of guys will try to edit things later on to try and correct it. Like George Lucas with Star Wars, with the prequels. He's constantly adding and doing new crap, and it sucks. It sucks. Some guys
even tried to fix the originals.
Yeah, that's
after the fact.
Some guys, they just need to understand, like, it's out there. People like it. Don't change it. It's in the court of public opinion at that point. You changing it and you thinking that you're changing it is just appreciating it. You're not helping it. And that's the case with Blade Runner. Like Ridley Scott, it just does not work thematically. The whole point at the end of it all is Rutger Hauer does his speech, does this beautiful monologue about the things that he's seen. And it's not like a robot where, it's a blanket statement. He's saying it with a hint of nostalgia and sadness, human emotions going, all these moments will be lost in time, like tears of rain.
Yes.
And you can see Harrison Ford looking at him and just watch as Rutger Hauer, as Roy Batty, passes. And it's like you can see something in Harrison Ford click. It's where he's just like, life is worth living for. Like there's a lot of people that live life monotonously, repetitively. They go to work, they come home, they're tired, they sit there, watch TV, they drink a beer, they go to sleep, repeat. And they do that for their entire lives, and their lives are boring and they hate their lives. I feel like honestly that's where kind of Harrison Ford was. Like even when they they had come to enlist him, hey, you got to come back, you got to be a Blade Runner again. He's like, I don't want to. No. And when he gets brought back, like he's kind of like not callous, but he's kind of like joking. He's like, you got the wrong guy, pal.
Yeah, he's like, I quit once and I'm quit twice now.
They force him to come back in, and that's when he gets, because he's back in that thing that he does not want to do. He's back in that repetitive lifestyle. He's back in that thing that he quit for a reason. He's being forced to do it because, as the cop said, if you're not cop, you're little people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tyrell has the great line earlier in the movie when he's talking to Roy, where he says, you know, it's, the light that burns twice as bright only shines for half as long, or something along those lines. And
Yeah,
I think, and I think that exactly like what you said, Roy kind of realizes it, and Deckard kind of realizes that life is worth living, no matter how long it is. Every minute you have is precious, and you got to live it to the fullest.
You got to live to the fullest. And obviously the light metaphor, it's apt because many, like some of the best talents, you know, they put out a certain catalog of music, of art, of wrestling, or of fighting. And it's this beautiful thing that they do so great and so well, but it's only for a short period of time before they die for, you know, not just random deaths. It could be, you know, drug overdoses like the Kurt Cobains of the world, et cetera, et cetera. But then there are people who have that same burning fire and intensity, and it prolongs for an entire lifetime. Like Terry Funk was that same kind of fire from beginning to end of his career. But not everyone can be that.
No.
But what was great though was when we're talking about Roy Batty, and like with how he did all these things, good, terrible things, as Tyrell says. He's like, you did all this in such a short time, and it's basically saying like you did all this in such a short time that other people will never do in an entire lifetime. And that speaks monoliths of, you know, of accomplishment. But also that also makes sense to why Roy, who is being filled with actual human emotion, why in anger, you know, he does probably one of the most brutal kills in all of cinema. And then also he kills what's his face?
Well, he kills Tyrell.
Kills Tyrell, then he kills the guy with the skin condition. I can't remember his name.
Oh, JF Sebastian.
Yeah, Sebastian. Yeah, come here, Sebastian.
Yeah,
and you know Sebastian's dead. I'm sorry, Sebastian. You're like, oh, and they don't show what he does to Sebastian.
No, and he kills the guys in the factory where they're making the eyes.
Yeah,
and he says, "If only you could see what I've seen with your eyes."
See through my eye. If only you could see what I've seen through your eyes.
Yeah.
But they even also, I think Blade Runner is one of the best movies of show don't tell, because if you're not watching critically and analytically, and you're watching it for a popcorn flick, that's not the kind of movie you're getting. No. You're getting a sci-fi noir film where you have to pay attention to all the little details. You have to pay attention to people's eyes, the way they look, their nose crinkles, because all those facials matter in telling the entirety of the story, which seems crazy, but not all film is meant to be just a popcorn flick. I hate to break it to people. Some film it's hard to watch. Some film requires you to pay attention to it. Like, you're not going to watch, I went and watched Dune, which is a comparable film to these kinds of movies. And you have to pay attention to the way the characters look at each other, the way their tone is, how they speak to each other, the way the film is shot, the way the music is, the way the lighting is. It all plays into the grand scheme of things, so you get the whole context of it. It's not like how you're out watching Shrek or the Goofy movie, which love those movies, but they're upfront, they're dumb. There's no subtext, there's no nuance. It's plain and straightforward. This movie is not that. This movie is a lot to take in. It's dense. It's dense with the things that it does. The when the enhanced scene is one, for example. Some people think it's slow, but
I love that.
You're watching him look at every little thing, analyzing it, going, where's it at? What am I looking for? What am I looking for? There it is. Copy it.
And you need to watch this movie in the way that Harrison Ford looks at those pictures, almost like enhance. Like, what am I looking at? What's beyond what I'm actually seeing?
Yes. And it's silly too, because one of the silly scenes when he's investigating before he kills the first lady replicant, and he starts doing the voice, I'm part of the inspection. And I'm inspecting for holes. Holes? Yeah, holes. You never know what kind of sick guy is gonna be looking through a hole. And I'm like, and it's like, why is he doing that voice? But it's like he's trying to play a character, so he's trying. That's once again, if he's a replicant, he sucks at being a replicant because he's doing the most stupid human mistakes ever. Like I'm not conspicuous at all. Here's the most fake 1930s detective voice in the world because he's nervous and paranoid. Like, this girl might kill me.
And to your point, I actually found this because my dad had the VHS of the theatrical release of Blade Runner. And in the official synopsis, this is how they described the movie. They wrote, in the year 2019, the police department forces Rick Deckard out of retirement to hunt 4 genetically engineered humans who have come to Earth. Designed to do difficult, hazardous work, the manufactured humans are stronger, faster, and smarter than non-engineered humans. They feel no pain or remorse. They are almost indistinguishable from other humans, and they are killing people. Now Deckard must stop them before they kill again. Now, to your point, they're stronger, faster, and smarter than the non-engineered humans. I don't know about Deckard fitting into that description.
Remember when in the final confrontation when Batty grabs his hand and
yes,
this is for Leon. This is for and I'm like, dude, this guy's terrible. Like he's dangling on the rooftop and he's just there with one arm. I'm pretty sure Roy could pull himself up with one arm. Deckard's like,
easily.
I'm slipping. I also think this movie is one of the movies where it clicked for me the intricacies and the relationships between all forms of art, whether it be music, whether it's movies, whether it's TV, and whether it's pro wrestling. Because you watch a lot of the Japanese wrestlers specifically, and a lot of the best Japanese wrestlers, like they're not speaking, like some of them speak in their matches, obviously, like Okada will yell during his matches and vice versa, but like the best ones, Suzuki, Shibata, Rina Yamashita is another one, Jun Kasai, Masashi Takeda, they become beloved and they become over because of their facial expressions, because their facial expressions tell what they're saying, what they're feeling, or the intensity that they're going through. And that's one of my favorite things that I've heard about my work recently has been like your facial expressions are just otherworldly. Because I understand that, like movies, pro wrestling is a very visual medium. And in this movie, Roy Batty is a pro wrestler. He has so many facial expressions. Like whenever he cuts to a scene, like he does little smirks, does this. He's bringing up Deckard at the end of the movie. He's like gritting his teeth, or when he's crying out Tyrell's eyes. The brutal, like the anger and sadness in his face as he's doing it, like the brutality. I'm like, that's pro wrestling. Terry Funk, Ric Flair, all the best guys were doing the exact same kind of thing. And I think when you start watching movies through a more critical and analytical eye, like what I tend to do is I'll sit there and I'll do an edible or something or some other kind of psychedelic, and I'll watch these movies and I will just, and my brain starts rushing. Like I get really fast paced brain. Like time slows down. It feels like, but I'm picking apart everything. I'll sit there. I used to, when Masha and I first started dating, I'd text her every day. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm getting high." It's like the end of the day. I'm like, "I'm getting high." She's like, "Are you watching Blade Runner again?" I'm like, "I'm watching Blade Runner again." Yeah, because it's my eyes and my brain would just latch into every little thing and break it down, and it's those kinds of films that it's just fascinating to me. Whether it's that or I did a crazy tweet, like I guess like 3 weeks ago, and I was watching Willy Wonka. I might have been on something, and everyone was like, "Where did you get a Garden of Eden analogy from Willy Wonka?" And I'm like, "That's just how my brain was working." But I was like, it was a comparative metaphor in terms of like literary analysis. Like that, I don't view movies from I'm watching it as a casual film goer. Like I'm viewing it from a 404 college graduate of. I'm
film
breaking it
studies
down.
class.
Yeah, I'm like, whether it's thesis, whether it's the concept of ego. I did critical theory in my last year of college, and I love breaking down films like that because once you understand it in a more collegiate scenario, and you can break it down in terms of more layman's terms, you can properly communicate the what it's meaning on a higher level, from a more collegiate level. If you can understand it at that higher level and you can break it down to a more layman's terms, you can effectively educate anybody on it, and no matter who it is. I could probably talk to my roommate about Blade Runner and why I like it in a simpler term, or if I wanted to go into like the the Garden of Eden metaphor that I was doing with Willy Wonka, I could explain why how I drew that conclusion, but make it make sense. Like through a tweet, it sounds crazy, but when people are asking me, like they come to me with a show and be like, "Where did you get a Garden of Eden analogy?" And I tell them, they go, "Oh, that actually kind of makes sense." I go, "Yeah, like that's the whole point of a metaphor. It's not that I think that's what they're saying. I'm saying in that moment, I saw that through what I was feeling."
And that's the great thing about film. I think me and Rob talk about it all the time, is that, art is subjective. I mean, if you're going to watch a movie, whether you like it or dislike it, your opinion is valid as long as you're able to articulate why you feel that way. And it's not just some petty, I don't like this movie because I don't like this person, or I don't like that. It's all subjective. And I just want, like, anyone who's ever like reviewing a film or talking about a film or even wrestling, just remember, it's all subjective. People are allowed to have their opinions. And it's great when we can talk to people like you who can kind of break it down and maybe point stuff out to people that they might not have seen before, and then they can appreciate the movie in a new way.
I firmly believe that there is a thing as good taste, and if you get into like 303 and 404 college levels, when you're speaking to professors and whatnot, there is actual quantifiable good taste, but it's also okay to have bad taste. It's just that when you get to knowing what good things are, you understand what bad things are. However, I also enjoy bad things. I watch a lot of like Showa era Godzilla movies that aren't good, but I also know that there are also good Godzilla movies. But you have to know what good things are in order to know what bad things are. It's not just everything that I like is good and that's it. It's like, no, there's quantifiably good and bad things. Like one of the movies I hate is Star Wars Rogue One. And people will go up in arms at me over it. And I go, I dislike that. I go, no, listen, it's not because I don't like the movie. It's here's exactly why I do not like the movie. And I'll say it's a fan fiction movie. It's just, hey, look at all the stuff that you saw from the original trilogy. I don't care about any of the characters in this movie. What about them do you like? And people go like, I'm like, see, there's no like actual character traits that you like. There's no personalities that are good. You liked seeing Darth Vader. You like seeing the AT-ATs. You like seeing the General. You like seeing horrible CGI Princess Leia. Like, I could break down why I don't like it, but I tell people, but if you like it, that's fine. I just think it's a bad movie, and if you have an issue with it, that's on you. I could tell you why I don't like it. That's the difference.
So I'm curious. Have you always been a movie fan, or when did that start for you?
I've always been a movie fan, but I'd say in terms of being more critical and I guess I could say analytical, it definitely happened like the late years of high school going into college, because I started hanging out not with like film majors, but like I would just go watch different kinds of movies, and I'd realize what movies are good, what movies were bad. And I also learned to realize to stop relying on movie trailers, because sometimes movie trailers, they don't know what to, like. I'm sorry, if like when the first John Wick came out, before the trailer that they did for John Wick, it looked hilariously bad. It was like Keanu Reeves' dog has got killed. It was his wife's dog. He's angry, and you're like, what am I watching? This is terrible. And then you go and actually watch John Wick, and it spawned 5 different movies, and they're great movies. But I've also went and watched movies like Star Wars Rogue One, and I sat there, and it was the most unentertaining thing I've ever seen. I watched the Ghostbusters, what was it, 2016, And I went in there going, okay, you know what? I'm open to it. We'll see. And I sat through it and I didn't laugh a single time. I was in pain watching it.
Yeah.
But then I'd go and I see other movies that, I was like iffy on, and I liked it. Like Hereditary. I was iffy on watching Hereditary.
Yeah.
I really like Hereditary. It's like the same with music, with pro wrestling, with whatever. I'm not a fan of a particular style. I'm just a fan of the entire spectrum of art. Like I can sit there and watch. There's a movie called The House That Jack Built that came out in the last couple of years. It's a Lars von
Yeah,
Trier
I've seen
movie.
that.
Yeah, and I tell people, listen, I liked it. I don't know if I'd watch it again. They go, what? And I go, it was it's a Lars von Trier movie. You know what you're getting when you're going into it. You're not here to have fun watching this movie. Same with a lot of like horror movies. I'm just like, I'm not having fun watching this. Mosh and I watched this Korean horror movie called The Sadness, and it is a phenomenal movie. However, do I ever want to watch it again? No, because we were both uncomfortable watching it. It got to levels that we were not ready for. But was it a good movie? Yes, but like it's
Yeah.
oh God.
You mentioned Lars von Trier. I remember the first movie of his that I watched was Nymphomaniac Part 1. And
movies.
after I watched that, I was like, I think I kind of understand what this guy's next movie's probably gonna deliver.
He's there to make you want to. He's a deconstructionist. Like he wants to deconstruct normal, like what we think is normal, what is good and what is not good. And here's why these people think this is good. Here's why people think, like, especially The House that Jack Built. The entire concept of all the things that I'm doing in this movie. This is my art. Why don't you appreciate my art? It's like it's literally it's subversing those people who, oh, you have to like my art because it's my art. Like there's a lot of pro wrestlers who are not good, and they say, well, it's my art, so respect my art. And it's like, but your art's terrible. And in that scenario, it's your art is murdering people in different ways. It's crazy, but I get what he's doing. But like Antichrist and those movies, I can watch them and I can get what he's doing. I just get no satisfaction out of it. And then there's people that do get satisfaction out of it, and I go, salute to you. It ain't me, pal. It's movies like Blade Runner where you can be dark and cold, but you could have a surprising warmth and depth at the end of it all. Like Blade Runner is very cold. It's very upfront about what it is. It's a dark, depressing, post-apocalyptic, futuristic world where people aren't valuable. Like we're all under the machine. We're all under the dark geist of the industrial complex, and we have to, like, these people are they're using replicants for momentary pleasure, or the government is using replicants for war or for mining and for all these other things. But at the end of it all is a guy finding out that life is hard, life sucks, life is not very good at all times, but there are things that are worth living for. Like him,
and he has that smile at the end too.
His love that he finds for Rachel is one of them. And people say that their love in that movie is not good, and I think it is, but not for, like, I guess, normal reasons. Like when you watch the love scene, it is awkward. It is it's awkward. It makes you feel awkward watching it. However, it's a guy who's been emotionally cut off, trying to express emotion, and it's a replicant who has never felt these things before, kind of owning up to having her own feelings. And I enjoy it too, because at the very end of it all, when they're done, Rachel goes and sits by the piano, and because she's had her hair up and done the whole time. I don't know if she's ever taken her hair down,
No.
but she makes the choice for herself to not only kiss him, but to take her hair down and to do something for herself. So in reality, she does what Roy Batty does, but in her own quieter way. She becomes more human, and she starts making decisions for herself. She puts her hair down. Not because Tyrell told her to, because she wants to.
Yeah,
one
Rob, I don't know.
question.
How do you feel? Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I agree. With, like, that was what was. I was just kind of doing my thing where I just shut up and listened because I agreed with pretty much everything he said, and
I like talking.
It's a good point because that's how I felt. The dystopian side of the story, you just sit back and you take in the story instead of if you look for things, like you said, if you pay attention, the story means more. If you just go into it wanting popcorn and trying to waste 2 hours, you're not going to get the story you want, or you're not going to be as entertained. If you go into it wanting to be, I don't know if mesmerized is the right word, but if you want to be like
challenged,
if you want like to have the like a new world like in front of you, that's the way I like it, and that's one reason I think I like so many dystopian style films, because it makes you think, as long as the director is giving a good story. So I agreed with a lot of your point there. A movie that it's not even close to the same, but Children of Men with Clive Owen. It reminded me in ways just how I felt. Like, it made me feel similar just to the What If. So
some people, I think people mistake how, like, they think art should just be easy to watch. It's like, no, some art requires your attention in order to get what the artist is putting in. Because some I tell, like, the students at the Fallout this. I say, some of you are going to go out there, and in pro wrestling terms, you're not going to go out there and write The Lord of the Rings. You're going to go out there and write Clifford the Big Red Dog. But if you're going to go out and write Clifford the Big Red Dog, and you're going to sell thousands upon millions of copies, good for you. However, some people want to go out and they want to write, maybe young adult novels in terms of pro wrestling. They want to write, like, WWE style pro wrestling. That's fine. And then there's some people like me where since I do deathmatch wrestling, it's more akin to horror, or I would not even say horror. I'm doing, like, I'd say Quentin Tarantino levels of, it's blood, it's vulgar, but there's an emotional heart to it. Like, that's kind of what I'm doing. But I also want to do things like the Lord of the Rings style epic, that I had, like what match I had with Speedball, I would say, with Prestige, would be it would be more akin to like a kung fu movie. The match with Minoru Suzuki and I, in terms of what I'm going to be putting into it, it's going to be I guess you could call it, like, you could do, what was that action movie? The Raid. Something like The Raid, or something like Old Boy, where it's emotional, it's brutal, it's uncomfortable, but there's something deep within it that makes you really feel. Like, I want people to feel something when I do that. Or you can be, Okada and Omega, or my personal favorite match of all time, and I don't care if it makes people uncomfortable, Okada versus Shibata. Like, some people want to go out there and write that style of story or write that style of movie where you have to watch the whole thing and you can't just not pay attention, because everything that they're doing matters. And that's how you're going to get the entirety of what they're putting into it. Not every match is Rock versus Hogan, where it's all fanfare. It's not very deep, but it's great to watch. It's a popcorn flick. Okada and Shibata is a movie. It's a movie where you have to sit there, you have to watch it, and by the end of it, and especially knowing what happened to to the wrestlers after the end of it, it makes you uncomfortable. But it's like, that's the human spirit, man. People doing what they're doing in that ring because they want to make you feel pro wrestling. They want you to feel the brutality of what they were doing, despite what happened to them at the end. Like, I don't know if either of them would change the outcome of that match, because it's one of the most poetically sad and beautiful swan songs ever. It's almost like almost like watching like The Last Samurai or something like that, where it's sad but it's beautiful. Like there's just something beautiful at the end of it all. Like when the match is over and everything's all said and done. Even the name Sakura Genesis with that sound, I was like, that's they're never gonna top that match. Like to me, there's no topping that match in terms of beginning to end title match of a cinematic. Like dude, there's so many cinematic markers in that movie too. I mean, in that match, where I'm just like, this is a movie. Like this is the young rapscallion facing a hardened fighter, and that hardened fighter is just laughing at every strike, everything that he's doing. Like it's beautiful. But that's I view pro wrestling, I view art through that regards. And people have to realize that no movie, no game is going to should just cater to them. If someone has a message or a purpose behind it, you as the partaker of that art should be able to sit there and put the time into it to understand what they're doing. Like I think it's lazy, and I think a lot of people don't want to view it. They just want to view it as, it's my entertainment. It's like there's more ways of being entertained. Like if I'm emotionally touched by something, that's my entertainment. If it touches me in a way where I'm thinking about it for days after, that's my entertainment. Like I think there's multiple levels of entertainment. There's that surface level entertainment, which is like the Goofy movie. There's Shrek. It makes you laugh, makes you chuckle. Or in the Goofy's movie sense, you laugh, chuckle, and then you actually do feel something at the end, and you're like, wow, why is that movie making me feel something? Okay, whatever. But it was up front with making you feel something. But then there's something like Blade Runner or The House That Jack Built, when by the end of it, you're like, I got to sit on that for a couple days.
That's how I felt with Midsommar.
Oh, I hate Midsommar. Like I like Hereditary. Midsommar was just it was like almost the same thing as Hereditary, but I'm sorry, I could not help but think it was not Children of the Damned. It was The Wicker Man.
Oh yeah, the thing was,
it's German feminist Nazi Wicker Man, because like the whole thing of their cult is it's Nazi. It's weird, and I'm just like, this is so weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, and when it ended, I remember just sitting there, just like, what? Like I need to take this in, and then it just I was like, I don't need to see that movie again.
That's how I did it, but I was like, God, that movie wasn't as good as Hereditary. Hereditary made me go, God. Another one I would say in terms of horror is, if you've seen it, is called The Black Coat's Daughter.
No.
That's a long. It's not long, but it is cold. It is dark, and it does not feel good at all. It is.
Yeah.
But
one horror movie that everyone loved, and it just didn't work for me was The Witch.
Oh yeah.
And I think to both of your guys' points, that's the great thing about movies. Some stuff's going to work for you, some stuff's not going to work for you. It's great.
Get why
just
not though.
Watch everything. Yeah, watch everything. Find what speaks to you, and then that's great. We cherish what you love. That's awesome.
I think a movie that's underrated in terms of horror, but in terms of having that emotional range where if you're paying attention, you'll feel the entirety of it. Exorcist 3 is the best Exorcist movie. Exorcist 3 covers so many ranges of human emotion, of feelings about the world. And Exorcist 3 and Blade Runner, I think, are comparable in terms of you have to pay attention to everything that's going on in that movie. The dialogue, the way the actors are, the way they're emoting, the way they're feeling. It has that same kind of cinematic range that I enjoy about Blade Runner, and especially the ending diatribe from the lead actor in Exorcist 3 is it is the horror equivalent of Rutger Hauer's speech in Blade Runner. It's a very good movie. If you guys have not seen The Exorcist 3, it is so good.
I have, but it has been many years.
watch it again, and if you want, I'd say watch it high, because that way you can kind of well, no, not high as in like it makes it's so you can oversee faults. When I watch things high, I'm much more vulnerable emotionally, so I feel whatever whatever the artist, whatever the director was trying to convey. And that Exorcist 3 is very it's almost like an argument against human nature of like the good things and the bad things, and it's a lot of the bad things. There's a couple scenes too. It's very much like Blade Runner 2, where it's a lot of it is show don't tell. Exorcist 3. Like there's not a lot of like gore in it. There's not anything like that. But it's the way they talk about the things that are like the killings and everything that happened in that movie, where it's brutal, and it's like the way they describe the things. You're like, because you're there's a particular scene. I know this is somehow turning into an Exorcist 3 thing, but there's a scene where a little boy gets killed by the main serial killer in this, and they're like, and they're talking about it, and one of the guys who was a priest, he goes, he says something along the lines of like, "Oh, life's not that bad," and while they're talking about this killing, and the lead actor goes, "The boy was a little black boy, and he was found with ingots stabbed into his eyes, and his face done like a minstrel show." And you watch the priest's face go from ha to, "Oh my fucking god, what?" And you can see you can see, just like in Blade Runner, to bring it back to it, how low and how dark and how cruel the world can be. Like, especially what they do to the replicants in this movie. Like, hey, you just have to kill them. We don't care if they feel. They have a 4-year lifespan. That kind of spiel. It's the exact same kind of, the human nature can be really dark and really cruel to things that it doesn't understand.
Yeah. No, and I'm not gonna front. I don't think I'd need the extra help. I'm a big crier, so stuff hits me pretty hard emotionally as it is. So I don't know that I want to push myself that much further over the edge.
That's saying, like, Mosh will come down. I'll be watching a movie, and I'll be like getting all of them, or I'll watch like Instagram videos, and I'll see like a puppy video that's like, this puppy survived this after saving its family, and I'm like, ugh. She's like, come on, she's like, you're Mr. Deathmatch. I'm like, I can't help it.
No, nice. And just to bring this back to Blade Runner, I know we kind of talked about the legacies. You mentioned them. So we got the giant global corporations, you got environmental decay, overcrowding, technological progress, the top being rich, the lower class, like with poverty, slavery, all that stuff. We have the production design, the city, that futuristic Los Angeles is so beautiful and has inspired so many movies. Like if we're going to talk about the Star Wars prequels, Episode 2, Coruscant, then you had, gosh, I don't know, Minority Report.
Things though, because everything in Blade Runner was practical except for a couple shots with the flying cars where they got rid of the wires. And then in the prequels, it's all CGI. It's like, I get what they were going for, but I will say the legacy of Blade Runner has affected so many horror movies, so many action movies, so many sci-fi movies, even just like literature, manga in general. Because Akira came out like a year or two before Blade Runner. So Akira and Blade Runner really set the tone for, I think, films to today. Because I don't think you would have Dune without Blade Runner, which is ironic because Denis Villeneuve also directed 2049. But you also probably wouldn't have, I think, like movies like Lord of the Rings if it wasn't for Blade Runner. Because everything in Lord of the Rings was mostly practical effects.
Even stuff like Minority Report, Inception, Total Recall, a bunch of these movies, Dark City, The Matrix.
Dark City especially. Oh my God. That's another one. Like you would not have anything without Blade Runner. Same with Dune too. I think Dune, like, unironically, Dune happened, so eventually we could get to where Blade Runner happens because of Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, where then Blade Runner would happen, so Blade Runner 2049 would happen, and then Blade Runner 2049 would happen, so we could get Dune 1 and Dune Part 2.
Have you seen either of the two Dune movies? I just watched Dune 2. It's outstanding. It's really, really incredible.
Dune 1 was like the base mark for it. It's the foundation so that Dune 2 could be the crazy war movie. Like Dune 1 was like a little bit of action, but much more political in nature, but it was interesting political stuff. And it had the same kind of things as Blade Runner, where it was a lot of show don't tell. It was the soundtrack, the atmosphere, the way things were shot, the color grading in both of these movies is astounding. But then when you get to Dune Part 2, where Dune 1 Part 1's at the base, Dune Part 2 is the war movie, because that's where you see all the action. You see the worms. When you go to the Harkonnens' home planet, and it's just all black and white. And well, so here's the gimmick with this too, and that's why once again it goes back to, I think, to Blade Runner. That was all shot in infrared. So the fireworks that you're seeing are just actual fireworks, but through infrared. So that's why they look like it looked like plasma shooting into the air. And it just was, it was so cool and so visual. Those movies are astounding. I need to go see it in IMAX.
Oh yeah, me too. And there's actually a great interview with the cinematographer Greg Fraser. He was on a podcast called Designing Hollywood, and he talked about seeing the final cut of Dune 2, and he's like, holy shit, I shot this. He's like, this is even better than the first one. And he talked about like how he was blown away, just the way Denis would kind of help him set, like where to set up the shots, what he kind of had in his mind. And I don't know how someone could have that image in their mind. And I'll ask you this, kind of, because everyone considers Ridley Scott one of the great sort of sci-fi directors of all time. Yeah. Maybe, because you have Aliens under your belt, you have Blade Runner.
Denis, he is one of the greatest. However, he's one of the greatest and also one of the worst. Like, you have to remember, he's great. He's directed some of the best movies, Terminator 2, for example. But he's also directed other movies.
That was Cameron.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Terminator 2 was Cameron.
The original Terminator, but one walks so the others could run. But you get what I'm saying. Of like, he's directed these movies, but then he also made Alien Covenant, and I you can't. I know they all can't be bangers, but brother.
Yes. So Ridley Scott, he's had an up and down career. So yeah, he started with Alien and Blade Runner. Then he had this really long kind of spell into the 90s. And then he comes back with Black Hawk Down, Gladiator, Matchstick Men.
I love Gladiator so much.
Another dip, and then he kind of comes back again in the mid 2000s with Prometheus and
did he do The Patriot too?
The Martian. Sorry,
did he do The Patriot?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, he's had a really up and down, and just both Terminators were James Cameron.
Oh, they were both.
They were both Cameron. But Ridley Scott had a really interesting career, and it was funny for this movie when I did some kind of research on casting, and curious to get, because I love Harrison Ford in this movie. I think at the time, the way they were marketing it, they needed like his presence. He just done Indiana Jones and Star Wars. But then over time, how he kind of morphed into this grumpy old man, it sort of like suits him even more now than it did then. But evidently Ridley Scott was really wanting Dustin Hoffman for the role, which he had just done All the President's Men and Kramer versus Kramer. And then he'd also kind of considered Al Pacino, Tommy Lee Jones, Burt Reynolds, Gene Hackman. And I mean, of all those names, the only one I could really see working is maybe Al Pacino, because he's the only one who he could kind of tell a story with his eyes. But I don't know. Harrison Ford is just so perfectly unhappy to be there.
Harrison Ford was meant to be Deckard. However, I think Gene Hackman could have done something cool with it. Gene is a great actor. I adore him in Hoosiers. Hoosiers is one of my favorite movies ever. Because he does a lot of facial acting in that movie too. Also Hunt for Red October. I'm sorry, goated movie.
But I don't know. A lot of those other guys, I don't know if they would be able to sink into that role deep enough. But Harrison Ford,
82 Pacino, I could see. 1982 Al Pacino coming off Godfather 2 and like Dog Day Afternoon, and I could see maybe Al Pacino getting into that one.
I don't know. It's such a weird thing of like what could have been. I just don't think any of them could have done it because I think Harrison Ford has a weird human vulnerability in this movie that I don't think those others could bring. You know, like Gene Hackman, I think would have been interesting to see, but Gene Hackman doesn't have that same kind of like regular everyman vulnerability. Gene Hackman looks like an old man.
That's kind of like Will Smith if like he was in the Matrix. It just doesn't seem the same.
It's not. No. And Keanu seems more like an everyday man than Will Smith does.
And Rob, for the little spoiler, one of the next episodes of Movie Club that we're filming is going to be Training Day. And one of the casting what ifs for that movie was they'd considered Will Smith for the role. But I think in the same way that Harrison Ford was perfect for this movie, Denzel has that sort of that more down-to-earth human quality about him that makes the role work so much better.
Yes. Denzel, you know, not all of his movies are bangers, obviously, but Denzel has always had that natural, likable, not weak, but sensitive, vulnerable human characteristic, which is why we're always attracted to the movies that he's in. You know, listen, I don't like The Equalizer a whole lot, but I liked him in that movie.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie; those are guilty pleasure movies for me. I can throw those on at any time and it'll just be like, Denzel's gonna kill some people. Cool.
Yeah, but you do it because you like Denzel. That's the thing. It's like it's like watching a lot of Sylvester Stallone movies. It's like they might not be good movies, but I like Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone is ironically someone who looks like an 80s wrestler, but he has the human sensitivity and vulnerability of a regular everyday man, especially because the Rocky movies were that.
Yes.
He was that before he became 80s action hero. He was the regular human everyday man. That's the whole point of the Rocky movies. That's why I adore the Rocky movies. It's watching someone come from nothing, get everything, then lose everything, and then try to, in his last moments, grasp that glimmer of glory that he had in his youth. And I think that's a human story too. I think the best stories are just human stories. Like another one, you might not compare to Blade Runner, but I feel like is Grave of the Fireflies. If you've ever seen that movie, not a movie I want to watch over and over and over again, because who wants to see kids die over and over and over again? But there's a human element and a lot of it is done with the music, with the way it's shot, with the characters and how they're emoting and what they're feeling. It's the best movies have those traits.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because you brought up the music. Vangelis did the soundtrack for Blade Runner. This is a year after he wins the Oscar for Chariots of Fire with that iconic score. And I always loved the music in this movie because it really places you in that like 1980s moment where like this is what we think the future is going to kind of sound like. It's sort of similar to Encounters, like what Spielberg used.
He was right though, because synthwave is as popular now as it's ever been. Man, you go to a club, it's all Vangelis sounding kind of stuff. You go to an EDM concert, a lot of it sounds like they took from Vangelis.
Yeah, so I take it you're a fan of his work then on this movie, because it's eerie, but it's also kind of hopeful and like, look how cool this stuff is.
So one of my favorite artists ever is Rush, and especially because in the mid '80s, they were doing the much more synth heavy stuff like Signals, and whatnot. So like a lot of the sounds are It's funny because one of the Rush songs called "Big Money." It is not like a fuck. But it's not a moody piece. but it's the way that it's just those synthesizers, the things that they do in the big money. Like I now I'm going to sing it. But
I love that song. I was about to do that too.
the synthesizers though remind me of Evangelist, and a lot of what Rush was doing I wonder like if they did listen to Evangelist at all, because a lot of the stuff they were doing in the 80s, they were using the synthesizers as mood pieces. Evangelist, the entire Blade Runner soundtrack, I listen to, I have it downloaded on Spotify. I'm on a flight, I'm on an edible, and I want to go to sleep and fall asleep to something that's going to make me fall into blissful sleep. I listen to that. I listen to a Rush song, or listen to the Lord of the Rings track. Evangelist is just the perfect choice for Blade Runner, because I can hear every theme and I know which theme it is. Like, and I'm sorry, the Tears in the Rain music behind it is some of the most eerily beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. Like I hear that music, even like the 2049 version, and I just look forward and I go, I'm like, don't tear up, don't get emotional, because it's so beautiful. It reminds me of I get, if I was going to compare it to like a Rush song, Mystic Rhythms would probably be.
Ooh, that's a good show.
It's that same kind of vibe where it's beautiful, but it's heavy. Evangelist he covers so many emotions. Like when I watched that movie, I couldn't imagine anybody else trying to write a score for it with any kind of different kind of instruments. It's truly. Evangelist was perfect for that movie. Like you would not have that movie without Evangelist behind it. Wouldn't.
No. Amen. I completely agree. Rob, you wanna take us home?
Yeah. What's the last movie that you watched that you really like enjoyed? It sounds like you just watched Dune 2, but was there something?
Dune Part 2.
Was there something else that?
Anything you'd recommend to the viewers, or anything you'd tell them to stay away from? Either or.
Stay away from the Scream movies. They're terrible. I don't know why people like those movies. They're awful. It's a parody. Okay, the parody was old when scary movies started parodying the parody. Okay. I just watched Dune Part 2. I adore it. Godzilla -1 is another one. Watch that if you haven't. I've never
Mason Madden also recommended that one when we spoke with him. So you're the second person to recommend that movie.
I was floored watching that movie. Like, I went and watched it, and I was on nothing, and I was shell-shocked by all the emotions that it put me through. It was so good. That's another one. And you know what? Here's a dumb movie. Not dumb, but I enjoy them. Grumpy Old Men. Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men.
Yeah.
They're funny, but they're funny, but they're emotional in their own way too, with people that are older coming to grips with life. And
filmed about an hour from me. So,
dude, Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon they're the best duo. I wish they had made more movies together. Like those two, like Grumpier Old Men, you'd think would be worse. It's the worst, it's the sequel to that movie. It's gonna be worse. No, it stands on its own. It's funny in its own way. It's great. It kind of repeats the story from the first one, but it spins off in its own way too, where it hits these different emotional beats. You're like, why are these movies about old people wanting to get laid making me feel things? It's so bizarre. But
with comedies, the number one objective is always, is it funny? And if it is, you can let a lot go.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's also childish funny too. That's what's even funnier. It's because it's older people being childish, and it's like you don't stop being childish. You're childish till you're old. People act like that all the time. It doesn't matter. But the best movies, it doesn't matter if they're funny, they're serious, whatever. They have layers of other kinds of movies too. They can have an emotional core. They can leave you with a gut punch where you're like, ooh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So yeah,
Godzilla -1. Also Shin Godzilla too. If you haven't like Shin Godzilla, then Godzilla -1. I think
Yes.
they're companion pieces. They're two sides of the same coin. I think you should watch them both. And then the Grumpy Old Men duology, I think, should be watched.
Well, tell everybody where they can follow you at or find you at.
Well, I'm Akira. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at the Akira Way. Same thing as on twitch.tv. It's twitch.tv/the Akira Way. You can catch me. You can catch the boy. We're either playing games, watching wrestling. We have guests on like Takahata from Team 4-Star. Generally, we're getting more stuff going on there. You can check out my merchandise through my Instagram. I'm always posting my merchandise, or through deathsamurai.com. I have a new set of merchandise out through the Circle 6 store, which you can find on my Instagram or on Twitter. I have a new jersey and pennant combo, which if you get both of them, you can get the Death Fighter towel that comes with it. And all that stuff goes directly to me, and it helps me do more things in the long term. I would be nothing without that. Also, I would say check out my card sponsor who sponsors me and lets me wrestle full time through their support. Hitman Break Sports, they sponsor companies like GCW and other independent companies, and they sponsor me. I'm their only sponsored athlete. You can use the code Akira10 to get 10% off of any cards, whether it's football, basketball, pro wrestling. They're getting into Pokemon, getting into Magic the Gathering. That's my influence. All that stuff. Online, go through them. They're opening their store, their actual physical store at the end of April, and I'll be there a lot too. So you can come there, you can play Pokemon, you can play Magic the Gathering with me.
Very nice. Cool. All right, Gisberto?
Yeah, you can find me mostly here. I have Twitter. I'm not on there, but I always appreciate the follow.
Yeah.
He's on there. He messages me on Twitter. He's a liar.
Yeah, I do. No, guys, I'm not going to deny it.
Guys, you can follow me at Rob Wilkins on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Fightful Rob and on Threads at Fightful Rob. Want to say thank you for tuning in. This was the movie review for Blade Runner, Fightful Film Club. Thank you and take care.